Every man carries a circle of hell around his head like a halo. Every man has to go through hell to reach his paradise.
Christoph, let me ask you, why do you think that Truman has never come close to discovering the true nature of his world until now?
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
So this incident that I'm going to talk about happened when I was around 9 or 10 years old, like I mentioned in the very first video. I was born in July 1973, so this would have been around anywhere between around 1981 to 1983. My father left the house on a normal day, just like any other day, to go off to work. He came back that night. He came back a totally different person. So let me explain what happened. By the way, anybody that gets into Scientology, I think you'll be able to understand this. My dad is a good dude. He's not stupid. He wasn't necessarily in a vulnerable, I wouldn't say, time in his life. A lot of times cult members can get roped in when they're making a transition in their life. They don't know who they are. They're vulnerable. My dad wasn't necessarily in that position. What happened is he went down to work that morning, and around 8 or 9 a.m., he was flipping through the newspaper, and he saw down in the bottom corner of the newspaper, it said, Dianetics. Do you want to learn how to communicate better? Do you have problems communicating? Something along those lines. But my dad reminisced to me that the thing that got him into it and caught his attention was he didn't feel like he could communicate very well. He's kind of a shy guy and a little reserved, kind of an introvert like me, but a really nice guy. Like everybody that knows him loves him, including me. That's what's so hard about this, because I know who he is and who he could be, and then I know what Scientology did to him, and they made him into somebody that's not my father, somebody that I don't like know, you know? And so that was the thing that hooked him. He didn't feel like he could communicate very well. He wasn't very good at communicating with me. He tried, but I don't think he just knew how to do it. Who the hell really does, right? Anyways, so what happened is he drove down, he saw that, he drove right down to the Dianetics Center in Ventura, California, which was about, 10 or 15 minutes away from his place where he worked at. And this is what happens, okay? This isn't unusual. He got in because he saw an ad in the newspaper. Sometimes other people will get in because they'll be approached by a Scientologist on the street that says, would you like a personality test? They have this thing called an OCA, which stands for Oxford Capacity Analysis. It has nothing to do with Oxford. That's just a word that L. Ron Hubbard chose to make it sound official. So rather than looking into it to see that it's bullshit and fraudulent, your mind will immediately go, Oxford, oh, it must be legit. So you can get in through a personality test, like my dad did. Hey, I want to know how to communicate better. I'm having problems with my family. It says Scientology can handle that. All you got to do is go down there and check it out. Who the hell wouldn't check it out? I mean, everybody has problems. I mean, a lot of people know about Scientology today because we have the TV and the internet, but realize when I was growing up, nobody knew shit about it. You know, you couldn't just go on the internet and type in Xenu. I didn't know what the fuck my dad was involved in. So anyways, this is what happened to him that day, and this is how they get people. He's not unique. They take you into a room when you get there, after you fill out their 200 question personality test, which in itself, that each of these is going to be a different subject. And like I said, that's what the other videos are for, because even breaking down how the 200 questionnaire already gets into your mind, that's a whole nother video right there. So let's keep it simple. Your mind's already getting, shall we say, tired by the time you fill out these 2 questions and you've been sitting at the church, quote unquote, for, a half hour to an hour filling this fucking thing out and thinking about these very interesting, shall we say, questions. So he would have filled that out, and then they took him into a room, and what they do is they find your ruin. That's why I called this video The Road to Ruin. Finding your ruin is a very very common parlance in Scientologies, i.e. the language of a Scientologist. So they have a whole technology on how to break a person inside of a room and get them to sign up for a basic course, sometimes a lot more, which was in the case of my father. What they do when they take you into the room, let's say I'm facing you right now. Let's say I'm the auditor. Let's say the door is back here. You would be in front of me because the auditor, per the training that LRH gives you on how to trap people, but of course he doesn't say that. He says how to get customers or whatever. The auditor, the one who's going to interrogate you and try to break you down so you'll buy a course, sits between you and the door because they're trained how to block people from getting out. They know that by finding your ruin, and what that is they're going to dig in this questioning session while you're blocked from getting out. And they're going to try to, what they call, re-stimulate you. In other words, get you feeling down, off balance, and vulnerable by telling them your deepest, darkest secret. They basically ask you, and would have asked my father, what's the one thing that if you could handle about yourself, your life would be great, would be so much better. If you could just handle this one thing, then everything else would be great. I have an idea of what that ruin would have been from my father, but I'm not going to say it because it's just speculation. Oh my God. But anyways, they would have found his ruin. Well, they obviously did because he came back to the house, a Scientologist. And it was the look in his eye that I'll never fucking forget from that night. Anyway, so he would have been interrogated by a guy probably named Jim Hamry. Might as well throw his name out because that guy's fucked up so many lives that I don't have a problem saying that. I liked the guy when I was in there, but he's very, very manipulative. He fucked up my family's and mine and many other lives. Anyway, so Jim Hamry most likely would have sat there and asked my dad what his ruin was. And of course, you're not going to tell that right away. So they have ways and techniques to get you to finally tell this stranger what you wouldn't even tell your wife, your girlfriend, or your most intimate partner. And they do have ways of doing that. Anyways, he would have asked, or he would have said, blah, blah, blah is my ruin. And the auditor, when they finally get what that thing is, after you've been crying or breaking down, when they found my ruin, I was a fucking puddle on the floor. When my dad would have been broken down, or his ruin would have been found, the auditor looks right in your eyes, trained with his TRs in. Those are communication drills, hypnosis drills to basically lock into the other person's eyes and say, Scientology can handle that. And they do it like that, like a robot with dead eyes and shit. That's what my dad came back with, these dead eyes that I'm going to talk about. They're complete hypnotized robots, and they're very convincing if you don't know anything about that, because that makes them super confident in what they're saying. They really believe and know Scientology can handle that because it handled them. The auditor, the person that's sitting across from you, used to be a average, Homo sapiens, and now he's a fucking Scientologist. So my dad came back that night. I don't remember what time it was. It was late, but I don't remember what hour it was. All I remember is when my dad came home, he was a different guy. the look that he had in his eyes, they call it, if you're in the military and you've been traumatized, they call it the 1,000-yard stare or the 100-yard stare, something like that. But he went away with a personality and a guy known as my father, and he came back like a robot. And there was no life behind those eyes. They were it was like he was either possessed, or let's say there was a spirit or a soul or a personality occupying his body. It was fucking gone, man. And that was the part that I'll never forget, that those eyes for the rest of my life. That was the first thing I noticed about my dad and how he was different. He was talking different. And the big upset, there was an argument between my mother and my father over this for several weeks. And it was really scary because as a kid, I knew this was something serious. I never heard him argue like this before. And I didn't know what the fuck they were arguing about. I had heard the word Scientology over the first few days of them discussing this, shall we say. But I didn't know what it meant. It could have been they were arguing over a fucking boat or something. I didn't know what Scientology was. I just knew it was causing a rift in the family, and it was a big deal. Come to find out later, the very first night this happened, my mother and father were just going at it all night. And it scared the shit out of me sitting upstairs in my bed. I couldn't sleep, going, what the hell are they fucking arguing about? What's this Scientology shit? So my mom comes up later that night, or this might have been a couple nights ago, or a couple nights after. I'm not really sure, but one of the nights, right when my father got into it, she came up and she said, I don't want to scare you, but there's this thing that your father has gotten into called Scientology, and he wants to borrow a large sum of money from a family member in order to suddenly give it to Scientology and take courses and stuff that he says is going to help him. My mom says, I have no idea what this is. I just know that we don't have a lot of money, and I don't know what's happening. I was bawling my fucking eyes out this night. My mom said that they might have to get a divorce if this doesn't work. I mean, it was very confusing. For a week straight, I didn't quite get what was happening. Finally, that resolved, quote unquote, and my mom started to go with it. I don't want to get too far off into that because that's for the next video. But basically, what happened is, once they broke my father, as they broke me and other people that get into Scientology, they found our button or our ruin. They usually sell you like a $30 course or a $50 course to get started. Sometimes, if someone's really reaching, as they say, and wants the technology, they'll try to sell them the whole fucking bridge, or at least up to clear. And that could be $50,000, $100,000. Some people have spent $200,000 getting up to clear. Let's just say it was a little more money than my family had at the time that my dad wanted to use to do this strange new thing that we had no idea what the fuck he was talking about. I'm going to get into what happened after that and with my mother and everything on the next video, like I said. But one of the points I want to cover here is how this affected me right away. There was an incident when I was in the garage and I was trying to get into the house. There's a lot of moments that I'm going to talk about that are stuck in my mind like a photographic memory because they're so unnerving and so weird that they stick in my mind. So, I mean, I was like, 9 years old when this happened? And I remember it like it was yesterday. I know right where I was standing. I was in the garage. I was getting ready to go in. And my dad had been in Scientology for a couple weeks at this point. And normally he would just, don't do that, or I don't want you in the house. He would, like a normal father, if he didn't want you to do something, he would tell you or act accordingly. But what he did, man, I tried to get into the house. We were arguing or whatever. And he just went silent all of a sudden, right when I tried to get in. His eyes went dead like I'm talking about. It's not funny, but I mean, it's fucking scary. It's a little funny looking back at it and also very frightening looking back at this as I'm talking about it right now. It has both elements in it of humor and tragedy. But he stopped talking, went completely silent, The eyes got dead, and he just reached his hands out and held me. I would try to get in, and I said, Dad, what are you doing? And he's like, he didn't speak. Dad, what are you doing? Can you talk? Can you speak? And then he just kept looking at me, and I try to move, and he was focused on me, and he was holding me. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Long story short, as I became a Scientologist, these are the techniques that I'm talking about that auditor who's trying to find your ruin uses to keep you in that room. They know that you're going to be traumatized. That's the point of it. And in Scientology, they always teach you the way out is the way through. So anything you turn on, i.e. get re-stimulated, i.e. traumatized, they tell you to keep going and push through that. And we're also going to talk about what happens when you do that to your mind, because that's the key to Scientology auditing, training, and how it breaks your fucking mind. So anyways, my dad